Here's an update on the roof rack. So a couple days ago, this was nothing more than several lengths of raw aluminum. These were lengths, I think they came like 23 feet, and I had the vendor cut them in half for me to haul them home in the van. Had these for a while. The design of this roof rack, basically, it's made out of 1 inch or 1.5 inch by 2 inch rectangular aluminum, and then the cross pieces are that same aluminum, and these angle brackets are 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch by 3/16 inch thick aluminum angle. And so I cut those to 2 inch pieces and drilled 1/4 inch clearance holes in them for 1/4 bolts. And the bolts come through the inside of the channels, and then this is just temporary. Those are zinc plated hardware. I will be putting stainless steel bolts on this so that won't rust in the elements up on the roof, and washers and lock washers and so forth to get that all put together securely. And then I have a couple of those same angle brackets here for supporting these cross channels, or cross angles I should say. And that cross angle is the 3/16 inch thick aluminum angle, 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, and then holding the solar panel in place is 1/8 inch thick, 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, and then those pieces are 1 inch thick. And that's what I'm going to work on today, is drill and tap holes in those. There'll be a rubber pad underneath those, and that's going to sandwich that solar panel down to that 1.5 inch angle. And so measure twice, cut once. I've probably measured a good 6 times to make sure that that's going to be the clearance area for the max air fan. And then the solar panel, it's a 485 watt single panel. That's the largest I could fit in between the distance I have between the air conditioner on the roof and the max air fan. So this here is where the air conditioner is going to be on the roof. So like I said, I measured that just to make sure, and we should be good to go. So the framework is all cut, lots of hole drilling, and then getting those all bolted together. So that's all a very secure and strong framework. On the bottom of that is will be the holes are already drilled to match up with the brackets on top of the roof of the van, and then those will be fitted with riv nuts. I'll be using 5/16-18 thread bolts, washers, lock washers. Probably even put some Loctite on there just for a little reinforcement to hold this rack together on the roof. So I designed this in a way where that solar panel is flush with the top of the roof rack, so you won't see that from the ground. It'll all be flush and hopefully aerodynamic. We won't have noise or any turbulence up there for that solar panel to last a long time. So today's project, like I said, I'm going to drill and tap for all those little mounting brackets, get that framework together, and then after that I've got brackets that will go on top of that roof rail. We're looking at it from the passenger side view of the van, and once that's done, then I have brackets that will securely mount the brackets that came with this Fiamma F45S awning, which should line up pretty nicely on the roof rack. These side rails are 13 feet long. This Fiamma awning is 13 feet 1 inch long, and we'll be bolting that on the top of this rail. There's actually 3 mounts for that. I'll be using 3/16 inch angle for that, and those are already cut. Those are on the workbench in my box here for parts. There's 2 longer ones and then a smaller, shorter one for the middle. So those 2 holes will mount that to the roof rack using the same 5/16 inch bolts and riv nuts, and then the brackets that came with the Fiamma awning will mount to those. And then hopefully we can get this pretty close tolerance to the roof of the van, and then I will put some sort of weather strip or rubber seal, I haven't figured that out yet, on the bottom portion of the Fiamma awning that will fill the gap between the bottom of the awning housing to the roof of the van to keep any water from running down the side of the van or over the sliding door when the awning is out, and if it does happen to rain. So there we are. That's the roof rack progress for today. Hoping to get this finished tonight, and then we're going to take it all apart, and then Monica's going to work her magic on it, getting it all sanded, primed, and painted with kind of a satin low gloss black Rust-Oleum exterior grade paint. I try to measure and be as exact as I can, but I'm not in a machinist shop, so I can't have exact accuracy for all the drilling and tapping and measurements on everything. So I do the best that I can with a micrometer, but I do mark all the pieces with a set of stamps. And so you can see I try to match these up, because if the holes are slightly off, you know, I have to take this all apart to paint it and then reassemble it. So I try to get as close as I can, but I do mark things to just give that little reassurance that it's all going to fit together after it's all painted. Making progress. I took the solar panel back out and decided to reinforce the angles that I was using for the solar panel, and doubled up on them. It just seemed like it was a little spongy, and I wanted to fix that up. So the framing is pretty much complete, bolted together, and I've got about just shy of 60 inches wide by about 3/16, and check that along the whole length to make sure we're even and square and parallel with what will be the awning. So we've got the awning up against the roof rack pretty close, and then there's a little sticker. It says support there on the end, and then in the middle, and then on the other end. And so that's where the mounts are going to be. So I've got these pieces of angle all ready to go, and then the brackets that came with the awning. Again, this is a Fiamma F45S 400. That's 13 feet and 1 inch long, and we're just getting ready to line that up and work on mounting that. The front end of this awning, so I measured, I don't know if you can see my mark there, kind of that blue mark down on the channel that says door. That is the seam between the sliding door and the front door of the passenger side of the van. And I just want to get this little portion, maybe, you know, a little bit like that, just past that seam, because there's an arm when this comes out that drops down, and there's a mount that I plan to secure onto the side of the van to support that mount. So I got to get that measurement pretty close, and then I also tried to hit the measurement pretty close to where the end of the roof rack channel will be at this end of the awning, and then likewise on the back end, because my lengths of channel are 13 feet long. Like I said, the awning is 13 feet 1 inch. So this front will hang over a little bit. Got to plan ahead for that to make sure that I don't interfere with the shell of the vehicle to get the crank into the opening there to crank the awning out. So that's the next step. We'll be mounting the brackets for the awning mount. Those will be screwed into the top of the frame. I'll be drilling that out for 5/16-18 thread riv nuts. So there'll be 2 riv nuts for each of those brackets, and then the bracket that came with the awning will be drilled into those and screwed into those. So we'll keep on going. You wouldn't know it by looking at it, but everything is cut, fitted, drilled, tapped where necessary, plenty of riv nuts installed. There's the roof rack, all ready for paint. There's all the brackets necessary to put it together. Kind of like a big Tinker Toy set. On to paint. The paint's been drying for about a week, so now back to assembly of the roof rack. So all the pieces, they've been drying. Remember, I stamped most of the pieces with the ABC 1, 2, 3, etc. to make sure I get them laid out in the same spot. You know, all this was drilled and cut by hand. Using a caliper, try to mark things as close as I could, but they're not done by a machining center by any means. So I want to make sure I get every piece back exactly where it started from. So that's with the marking system that I had. So the large pieces are laid out, and then we've got the little platform here with all of the angle brackets and everything that was cut for screwing it all together. And then everything will be put together with stainless steel fasteners, 1/4-20, some 5/16, and then nylon insert, lock nuts for the most part. Don't want anything coming loose up on the roof. So we're gonna start bolting this together. I'll have to pause for a little bit and wire up the lights. We'll put them on before we lift the rack up on the van, and we'll go from there. We'll show you more in a bit. There's all the brackets laid in position. Had to find those all, get them in the right spot. And then here's just an example of the markings. So you can kind of, you know, hopefully you can see that. The C, there's C1 bracket. So that all goes together. Here's C2, and so that's the other side, C2 right there. So that's how we're remembering to get them in the right spot, so this all bolts together nicely. Next step, going up on the roof of the van. Got the lights installed, 4 corners are all bolted together. The middle part's not yet. That'll be for the solar panel. Going up on the van. Okay, the roof rack is on. Got it all on. I'm getting ready to bolt up the... Ready to, I don't want to fall off the ladder here. So got it all secured. Put the cross pieces on for the solar panel, and that's what's going up next, is the solar panel. So Monica's on the roof, the master mechanic fastening all the screws. Okay. you can't really see it from down here. The solar panel is up there. And let me just take you up there and I'll give you a shot of it. It's really laid down in there, flush with the top of the roof rack pretty much. So everything's secured. Actually, next step we got to put the awning on, but there's the 485 watt solar panel. Cross members on the 1.5 by 2 inch rectangular framing. That's 3/16 inch thick aluminum, and then 1.5 by 1.5, and then these are 1/8 inch thick 1.5 by 1.5, double reinforced there, just to keep it from flexing too much or bouncing, and then inch by inch angles with some foam padding to hold the awning or the solar panel in there secure. So next step is the awning. So you can find just about anything on the internet. We didn't know how we were gonna cover that end. It's an 1.5 by 2 inch rectangle, and here's a little pack of end plugs for doing just that. These are the awning mounting brackets. So these are just a 3/16 inch thick 1.5 by 1.5 angle with riv nuts in the top of the roof rail, and these are spaced to the recommendations by Fiamma that has stickers on the back of the awning that tells you where to put the brackets. So the 3 brackets, one on each end and one in the middle, those are here, and then the awning will just sit down on the top rail there, and then it'll pivot in, and once we get it adjusted, then we'll drill a hole, and there's a couple bolts with nylon lock nuts that will come in from the bottom of the awning and lock that in place. So next step is to put the awning on the roof rack. This is it. This is the top of the van. The awning is all mounted and secured. Went through and retorqued all the bolts holding the rack to the mounts on the van. Solar panel in place. That completes the installation of the roof rack, solar panel, and the Fiamma 45S hand crank out 13-foot long awning. Alright, the final step. The awning is out. Checked it over, testing out to see how that works. It's actually pretty simple to operate. Start cranking it out and drop the legs and keep on extending it. So we'll put it back in a few minutes. But there's the end of the project of the roof rack, and so far so good. So we'll call it good on this one here, on this update. So subscribe and like the video. Appreciate everybody watching.